Good morning, everyone. It's Kay Francis, your host for It Is What It Is, or is it? Today's topic is the things people need to know about psychotherapy and counseling. Actually, they're not two separate things. They're just, some people call it counseling, some people call it psychotherapy. But first, I just want to say I'm really happy you joined me and that, my gosh, it has been just a fabulous fall here. All kinds of colors, everything from purple to orange to red to, you know, you name it, mixed colors. It's been fabulous. Now, you have to understand that I could kill a silk or a plastic plant just looking at it. So I'm not a gardener by any means, but nature is exquisite. So much for my weather report. I will go on and let's get into this subject. Over my 40 plus years of being a therapist and practicing, I've learned that many people, they just don't have a complete understanding of the therapy process. And sometimes that backs them off from wanting to make an appointment. So I'm going to go over a few things that what you can do so that you can get comfortable because you need to find a therapist that you and the therapist are going to be a good fit. That's really important. So I start off by building rapport with the therapist on the first session as I'm escorting them back into my office. And then from there, I ask them if they're feeling a little nervous or apprehensive, because usually they are. And we speak a little bit about that, which gives us a chance to talk. And then I go on to use a genogram. I love genograms. They're like a map. They take I take the history of the client and the history's family for 3 generations. What's good about this is we are now interacting. We're working as a team. We're working together. And I'm acquiring all this valuable information that she needs me to acquire, or he needs me to acquire, whatever the case, so that I can do my job the best way for them. As I said, everybody has a different style, work different, so no two therapists are the same. So you have to really find that person. So here's what I suggest that first set yourself up to feel free and designate yourself as an interviewer to book your appointment. You're going to call the office and ask to speak to the therapist that you want to book an appointment. If the secretary tells you that for whatever reason the therapist isn't available, then it's really okay to say that you would like the therapist to return your call. Keep that conversation brief. If that's not an option, then move on. Make other calls, keep making calls. And you should make at least 3 or 4 calls, whatever. There is a company called Psychology Today. You can look up that website. And honestly, they have a they list all licensed therapists. They also have access to whether they've ever been disciplined by a regulatory board. So they're ethical and they give you all kinds of information and let you see pictures of the therapist and read bios, etc. So that's a possibility. But if you're calling and you're interviewing, you want to be a really good listener once you've asked the question. Hear what that therapist is saying, and you're going to start getting a sense of the overall tone, the overall personality, basically. And that's a good way. But the next best way is to ask a friend or a family member, and don't be embarrassed to do that. And a lot of people are. They don't want to tell anybody. But you know what? They're your best referral base because, but honestly, they probably have been, and maybe they can refer who they've gone to. And if not, at least you're getting it out there for getting some help. That archaic belief that you had to be a cuckoo bird to enter therapy, that's long, long gone. And actually, therapy is an education that I know I insisted my children have. Because what's better than educating yourself, not only about all the things you need to know to prepare for life, but how about investing in yourself and knowing and understanding what emotions and how you deal with it and lots of other stuff. So just let that fear go. And why should anyone have to suffer when there is help? Therapy is today is well respected. It's an additional tool for doctors and to refer patients. It's respected. So why suffer? Not when you have a chance that you can go and see someone. Remember when that therapist calls you back, and it could take up to 48 hours. That's reasonable. If they call you back, you want to ask questions such as, are they licensed? You need someone licensed. Ask if they take insurance and make sure that the one they take, you have. And if they're self pay, make sure to ask what their fee is. Never be embarrassed, as I told you, to say you go to therapy because it's not what it used to be. But think of it that it's also an opportunity to find yourself. I can only give you, like I said, a peek into this process because we don't have the time. And in that first session, I like to do genograms. Um, Basically, it's laying out a map of my client and their family history, 3 generations worth. After we've done that, I've left enough time for the patient to be able to ask me if they have been patiently, no pun intended, to want me to ask them is what brought them into the therapy. And we talk about that. Mostly at that point, it's the patient talking, which is great. And then we go on to starting to close it up. I try to give them a little feedback first about maybe some of the things I derived and might be helpful to them to know before they leave. And then from there, I stand up, we shake hands, and I tell them I enjoyed meeting them and that, you know, feel free to call me if you think of questions later. Most people do. Not a problem. And I also tell them, which I think is very important, that if they want to book an appointment right now, we can, but they may want to go home and think about it and think about, you know, what they felt and so forth. And then they can call me. And we've now said goodbye. So that gives you just a little insight about that first important session. Now I'm going to give you a case referred to me by a pediatrician so that you kind of see what's involved in therapy, keeping in mind that you never know what you're going to get. And because people aren't the same, but also you don't know what's coming through your door. So you have to have a lot of training and you have to be able to be flexible so that you can change things on the spot as you're seeing what your patient needs or what the patient is more comfortable with or what makes them uncomfortable in that first session. That is a skilled therapist. But I'm going to have to just explain what I did in this case, which will give you an idea of what's involved. A pediatrician called to refer a 4-year-old boy to me. I will refer to him as little guy. What the pediatrician that called me was concerned about is that he'd been with this little boy since birth and that he had never heard him utter a single word. And he was really concerned because he was getting ready to go into preschool. Over those 4 years, when the doctor expected that he should start with words and never heard anything, he really got concerned and would bring it up to the mother, who would say he talks at home all the time. He just doesn't talk outside or to anybody else. And he then said, "Look," he told him, "I'm going to give him your phone number. I'm referring them to you if they'll go, because this is not good for the child. He needs to be able to talk once he gets to preschool." So I said, "Fine." 2 weeks later, I think it was, something like that, the teacher from the preschool, who apparently the parents sent to without the therapy, um, called the mother very concerned and said, "Is there any reason your son cannot have ice cream when we let them buy it during recess time?" And the mother said, "No, he can have ice cream. I send him with the money." And went on to tell her that, "Well, he never asks for it. And even if I ask him if he wants it, he doesn't talk. And he doesn't talk to me or the children. We haven't heard a word from him. And I'm kind of concerned and I don't know what to do for him. Is there anything I need to know in his history that I don't have?" Well, need I say more? The mother was pushed and she made the appointment. I take the parents first when it's a young child so that I can get the history and get the kind of a feel for the dynamics between the couple. And mother was forthright and rather upbeat and explained, that he talked fine. He had a good vocabulary. It just wouldn't talk any place. She was great. Dad, lovely, but really kind of a flat affect, which means kind of like he, was monotone and how he spoke and kind of laid back, and he didn't look happy, basically. But I got the information I needed to get, so the next session included a little guy. Well, in walked this blonde-haired, huge blue-eyed little guy who was absolutely adorable. You just wanted to take him home. And true to form, he didn't speak. So I sat on the floor, took the box of toys out, and sat them out for him to play with. And mom and I and dad and I just kind of talked casually. And then I finally would pick up a toy and say, "How about if we play with this together?" And he would shake his head no. And then I eventually took a chance. And I asked him if it was okay with him if I asked mom and dad to let us talk alone, for them to step out of the office. He shook his head yes. They left. And much to my surprise, I was amazed he was not at all distressed that they had left the room. And I thought, well, maybe this is a good sign. They'll talk to me without them, which mostly happens with children. Not now, not with little guy. He didn't say a word. And of course, I tried. And over the weeks, I cannot tell you the different things and gyrations and you name it, what I could do to get him to speak. I had never come up against this, and I don't think I ever read a textbook or had a professor talk about this particular type of thing. So you do what you can do and the best you can do. Well, I'm kind of eclectic in my approach because I draw from a lot of different theories and I use whatever I need. So one day, there was no one in the office and there wasn't going to be anyone. So I get a Nerf ball and I take little guy's hand and we go to the big, big waiting room. And I tell him, we're going to play catch today, but there is a rule. And he shakes his head as if like he's hearing me. And I said, and the rule is that we count 1, 2, 3 before we throw the ball to each other. Got it? He shakes his head. I take the ball and I count 1, 2, 3, and I throw the ball. He picks it up and throws it back. Now, this became a pattern. I would pick up the ball, I would count 3. Each time I would get louder and louder and throw the ball. I could tell because there was some little giggling here and there that the louder I was getting, the more excited he was getting in the game. So I thought, okay, so now I'm screaming, 1, 2, 3. You can imagine. And he doesn't answer. So I stop the game. And he looks at me with a frown and really like, what's going on here? And I say, little guy, we can't play the game anymore. You're not following the rule. You have to count 1, 2, 3 before you throw the ball to me. Now, you want me to give you another try at this? And he shakes his head, yes. So I do my counting, I throw the ball, and what do you think the little guy did? He picked up the ball, and before he threw it, went with his fingers 1, 2, 3. He didn't say it, but he held up each finger. Well, I was ready to roll on the floor laughing. I can't even explain it. It was the funniest thing. And yet I knew, well, what a smart kid. And boy, does he have control. you know, there was no doubt in my mind. So I decided the best approach was we went out for ice cream that day. No, following that, the parents came in and they were furious. They brought them in and they sat down too. And I thought, oh boy, what's happened? And the mother looks at little guy and says, tell Miss Francis what you did to your father. It was dangerous and it hurt him. Tell her. And keep in mind, I've never heard this child speak. Here's what it sounded like. Hey, Kay Francis. He said, he had this low voice. He said, I had a dart and I took it over while my dad was talking on the phone and I pushed it right in his tushy. Oh my God. If ever I had to control myself, it was then. And his father jumps in and he said, you knew that was a business call. And the mother says, she tells him, you apologize to your father. So with his head down, he apologizes and then looks at me with a mischievous look in his eye, by the way. And the parents leave, and I take him for ice cream. We bring it back, and we sit on the steps outside on the porch. We're eating our ice cream, and I say, little guy, did you know that would hurt your father? Yes. Well, did you want to hurt him? Yes. And I said, "Can you tell me why you went out?" And then the tears started as he explained that one night he heard mommy crying and it woke him up and he came out and dad was just kind of in circles and mom was covered with blood. Well, I happened to know the mother was pregnant, so I could make the assumption she was miscarrying. But how would a little 4-year-old boy know something like that? What happened was father grabbed him, took him to his room, and told him to stay there, which, unbeknownst to the parents, he didn't. So there he was, witnessing this entire scene. This is traumatic for a little boy. He doesn't have the wherewithal to put these pieces together or ask the right questions. And the ambulance comes and takes mom out, and he wants to go with mommy. And again, he's put back in his room and told to stay. I asked him who stayed with him when mommy went in the ambulance, and he told me, Dad, until grandma got there. And then he just sobbed. He just sobbed. And he said, Daddy didn't help her. It's Daddy's fault. I thought mommy was dying. And I don't want my mommy to die. And I said, Of course you don't. But you know, little guy, she didn't die. She's home. And she's very well and she's good. Right? He said, mm-hmm. And I said, So we need to really get over this a little bit and understand it better. So we're going to have a session, all three of us. And that's what we did. It was discussed openly and a lot of intervention done. And what it ended up being is that I referred the father for therapy, of which the mother would join on occasion. And I didn't need to refer little guy anymore. It was so obvious that he was angry with his father and he was punishing him. And when I asked him that straight out in front of the parents, he admitted it. So our last appointment, as I say, was working through all that, all as together. Now, did I think that I need to continue to work with little guy? Not really. Not really, because the report back from the teacher, because I spoke with her directly, was, oh, he's doing fine. He's talking to everybody. He's timid, but he talks and he's eating ice cream. So that's the end of that case. That gives you just kind of an idea of what you don't know you're going to get and kind of how you have to have the right training so that you can move in and out and figure it out. That's what they're there for. Why would anybody need to suffer when there's therapy, when there's help? Therapy that's respected. Doctors, it's an extra tool for doctors. It's an extra referral place for them when they see what they see, if they're working with all kinds of things, depression, anxiety, it just goes on, trauma. So why not give yourself that chance? And especially to find yourself. I hope that this little brief overview could bring you some information that makes the thought of going to therapy easier and with greater understanding and how to go about it. So in closing, I want to thank you all for joining, as I always love when you join me. And we're growing and we'll continue. And that's because of you, as I always tell you. So thank you. I want to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your day with family, friends, wherever you go. And remember, keep your faith, never give up hope, and know when to let go. God bless everybody. Have a great holiday.